If he was among us today, what would you ask him? Gosh, that's an interesting question. Oh, another one. His humility and humanity whilst being a supremely good human being. Gosh, I didn't know he recommended food. I didn't know the answer to that question. If you can speak to the Prophet Muhammad now, what would you say to him? Gosh, I think that'll be a very personal conversation, I think. Oh, my name is Paul Williams. I'm an Englishman from London, and I run a blog called Blogging Theology on YouTube. I've not seen these before. So this is, why do you love the Prophet Muhammad, upon whom be peace? Well, that's an excellent question. I think a couple of reasons would be his character, that he was a very approachable human being, but more than that, he was very virtuous, but also very humble and approachable, as I say. So he's not like someone who was so good that I couldn't go near him. He's someone that I think one could have related to and loved and got to know in the flesh, but even though he was a supremely good person. And that's quite a rare combination of someone who is very attractive as a human being, as well as being very, very good. Is the Prophet Muhammad, upon whom peace, if he was among us today, what would you ask him? Gosh, that's an interesting question. I would ask him, I think I'd ask him more about the Akira, about the afterlife. Obviously he only knows what was revealed to him, but I would want to talk to him about that. And also about the signs of the end as well. We're beginning to see now some of these things taking place with the very tall buildings in certain parts of the world, that the people who were once shepherds or nomads, and now they're building these remarkably tall buildings, and that's one of the signs in the Hadith. So I'll ask him more about the signs of the end as well. Oh, another one. Okay. To love him is to know him. What characteristic or characteristics of the Prophet Muhammad do you admire the most? Yeah, I think I've already covered that. His humility and humanity whilst being a supremely good human being, and that's a very precious characteristic. So I think it's someone you could confide in and not feel judged, and yet he was a very holy man. So I guess, yeah, that'd be the reason. How would you describe the Prophet Muhammad to a non-Muslim? And that's difficult, because depending on who the non-Muslim was, I mean, if they were a Christian, for example, I'll give a different answer than to an atheist. So to a Christian, I might say, well, if you read your Gospels, the early Gospels, and see what Jesus taught about God, it's actually the same as what the Prophet Muhammad, upon whom be peace, taught. It's the same religion. So in fact, if you follow Jesus, you should follow Muhammad. So that would be my way in to talk about the Prophet with a Christian. With an atheist, I would have a different angle. I would talk about how we naturally believe in God, and that there's evidence of God's design in the universe all around us, and that this creator who has designed this universe has actually sent messengers and prophets to mankind so that we may know better how we should live our lives on this earth. So I would start perhaps with who sent Muhammad rather than Muhammad himself, to an atheist, I mean. And so on, depending on, I would listen carefully to what that person was, where they were coming from, before I just gave them an answer. Rather than just give them the same answer, I would give a carefully tailored answer. I want to do that anyway. Another one. Which food or drink recommended by the Prophet Muhammad do you like? Gosh, I didn't know he recommended food. I didn't know the answer to that question. I'm going to have to pass on that because I don't know the answer, I'm afraid. So, something for me to look into, obviously. If you can speak to the Prophet Muhammad now, what would you say to him? Gosh, I think that'll be a very personal conversation, I think. I think I would actually more want just to be with him, actually, and to observe him and to experience his company, actually, rather than have lots of interesting conversations. I think being with someone tells us a lot about who they are, as well as having conversations with them. So I think that would be one way. Tell us one thing that some people may not know about the Prophet Muhammad. Again, it depends who they are. I mean, obviously most Muslims probably know about the Prophet much better than I do. But one of the things that most Westerners don't know, I would argue, is when the Prophet finally conquered Mecca from the pagans at the very height of his power, when he and his companions went back to Mecca and subdued it, if you like. How did he treat his enemies, those who had attacked him and killed his family and persecuted his companions over the years? And the Prophet explicitly referenced Joseph, or Yusuf, Prophet Yusuf, a character found in the book of Genesis and the Bible, of course, and how Joseph treated his brothers who had sold him into slavery and abandoned him and treated him as a dead man, basically. And the prophet likewise, that Joseph showed mercy to his brothers, and likewise Muhammad showed mercy to the people from Mecca. So he could have just destroyed them, but he didn't. He showed them forgiveness and mercy, because God is merciful. He's the most merciful of those who show mercy. And that is something that I wish people in the West would know about him, actually, that they often have these terrible stereotypes about a warlord, but in fact at the height of his power, when he had complete ability to destroy his enemies, he actually showed them mercy and forgiveness. And that is a very rare quality, actually. So that's what I want to share with them.